what's going on, everyone? Ali back at it again with another video. This is going to be a build series of the engine for my E46 M3 turbo build. As you guys saw in the previous video, kind of did like a little introduction of what the plan is with the car. Now, you guys saw the engine coming out of the car. Previously, this isn't the engine that came out of the car. I actually bought a semi-built engine secondhand or used, which is this right here. So the built engine, and you can see all the internals that were in the engine. We can go over those and why it's in bags and whatnot. So what we have here on the table is a brand new crank from BMW. 0 miles, like the guy that I bought it from said. Just got it back from the machine shop, had them check everything as far as the balancing, and it was a little off. Now I know sometimes cranks do come out of the box kind of uneven. He said it was to a point where it didn't really need to be balanced, but to what their liking is, and I trust them very much. Shout out to Precision Machine Shop in Hyattsville. Really great machine shop. I'll put all their information in the description below. So brand new crank. These are all the main caps and main bearings. Main bearings are King bearings. Everything looked good. Also comes with ARP full hardware kit. Now what we'll do is we'll take out a piston and a rod, and we'll kind of show you guys what we're going with. They are assembled already. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to be going with a SuperTech rod and a Wiseco piston. Now these are lower compression pistons. These are 8-to-5-to-1. It's a little bit on the lower side as far as what I wanted to initially run. What I wanted to do is I wanted to run a 9-to-5-to-1 or maybe a 10-to-5-to-1. But it was nice that these come with, I think these are probably the lowest compression pistons to my understanding of what you can buy. So it's cool that it has it. And yes, this is the block. The block was already overboard. That's kind of what made me buy it. And then also I had the brand new crank, so it was really nice, and it came with all the internals. So everything that I bought is on the table, minus the stock heads and cams, all that stuff, which we'll go over later. The machine shop still has the head for this engine. Hopefully we can get it back soon, and that'll be a second part of the video. We'll break it down as far as what I went with, springs, retainers, and all that good stuff. But for now, this video is mainly going to focus on assembling the bottom end. So what we're going to do is today in this video, we're going to throw the crank in the block, throw the bearings on, main bearings, check all the clearances, and then we're also going to put the pistons inside, check all the clearances there, and that's pretty much it. Alrighty guys, we are going to start throwing the main bearings back inside. Now I'm sorry, I kind of jumped the gun already and started installing some. So actually, you know what? I'll go ahead and uninstall some for you guys. So it's pretty straightforward. With these bearings, you can see here there's little tangs, and those tangs kind of match up in the motor. So throw it in there and it slides right in. Now this bearing is the trickiest, and you guys are going to see me struggle with it. I'm not sure what it's called, but this bearing, let me see if I can show you on the main cap. Probably not. Actually, I might be able to. So this bearing right here, you can see it's a little bit taller, and it sits in the motor a little bit deeper. Let me take the camera off the thing and show you guys. So you can see there, this bearing is here. So the 6th bearing on the S54, oops, sorry guys, it's gonna get a little hectic. So you can see as far as the bearings go, right? They sit nice and flush. This one has an extra lip. So that is there to prevent that's the shim that prevents the crank. So when you push your clutch pedal in, your crank actually moves a little bit. So that's what that bearing is there for. That shim. Now, if I'm explaining it incorrectly, I do apologize. Still trying to get a grip on how to explain things. Now, make sure you always lube your bearings before putting your crank in. Always lube it. You don't want to put it on dry. You can see I'm using assembly lube here, and I'm being very generous. Don't be scared. Right? I might have put a little bit too much on the first one, but I'd rather have too much than not enough. And I'm just spreading it with my finger, right? So what we're gonna do is now I'm gonna change the camera angle here. We are going to be putting the crank in the block. Now make sure you pick up your crank and be very careful. If you didn't go to the gym, you're definitely going to get a workout. Here. And slowly place it in your engine. Like so. All right. Now the crank is in. There we go. Need a nice little tug there. Spin it freely. You can see it's spinning. And you see why we lubricated those bearings. You can see the lube is spreading through, and it's spreading nice and evenly as I spin it. You always want to spin it to make sure it's not binding. And then when we put the main caps on, you'll see why we're going to spin it as well. Okay, now for the main caps. We're going to start from the back and work our way forward. Now the same thing with the main caps, they have those tangs. So make sure you match those tangs with the tangs on the block. All right, guys. All right, now for the ARP main bolts. ARP says that you hand tighten them in your block. So that's what we're going to do. Hand tighten them. Now I might get the Allen key that inserts and just make sure it's all the way fully seated in there. Anyways, that's main cap done there. Second one. Oops, got it a little dirty. Same thing, make sure you match up your tangs. Place it there. And it goes right in. Boom, perfect. Also, guys, drop in the comments below, if you can, any tips, tricks. I am recording this on my iPhone. I wish I had a different camera angle. I wish I had a GoPro to put on my head and kind of give you guys a bird's eye view. I'm going to try to get a GoPro. Fingers crossed. All right, looks like that one bottomed out. All right, I'm gonna pause it here and try to give you guys a better camera angle. All right, guys, let's see. I got a new camera angle going for you guys. So this is what we're gonna do. You can see we got the main caps installed. Now, since I do have the full ARP, I read the instructions on the ARP main studs. And I didn't know this. They called to install the studs. Their instructions say install the studs first and then put the main caps on. So like I was mentioning before, it's kind of weird how you have to install the studs first into the block and then the main cap with the bearing. I thought it was put the main caps on install the ARP main bolts afterwards. But I kind of see why they ask you to go ahead and install it before, so that way when you're hand tightening, because it does call for you to hand tighten the studs on versus using an actual Allen key, which I was going to do, so that way you can see when it bottoms out. I believe that's why they ask you to do that. And there we go. Our main cap slides on with no issues. Awesome. Now for the oil pump, the brackets go on the 3rd main cap and the 5th main cap. And there we go. Boom, done. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and grab some of the ARP assembly lube, and we'll go over how to do that. We'll torque everything down. I'm also gonna grab my torque wrench. We'll torque everything down, and then we'll flip this over. Make sure everything spins freely, doesn't bind. You're probably asking, oh man, you're not putting a plastic gauge. Everything's already been checked. That's the whole reason why I'm not putting a plastic gauge. I know all the clearances on the bearings, everything's good. I'm sorry I didn't record that prior to disassembling the engine. I honestly didn't even plan on recording or even documenting this build, but this is a pretty major build for me, so that's why I wanted to document it. All right, guys, we are back. We got the ARP assembly lube as provided in the pack. Now, like I mentioned before, ARP does say they want you to lube the following. They want you to lube the threads. So we're going to put a little dab there. They want you to lube the nut. We're going to put some there. And they also want you to lube the washer that goes on the nut. So do that there. Place the washer down. Place the nut down. We'll hand tighten that there. And then we'll repeat the process for all the other nuts. got everything all hand tightened on for the most part. I might have went a little overboard on the lube, but I'd rather have too much than not enough. So now what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and torque everything down. But before I do that, I want to go ahead and go over all the studs with the socket just to get those fully seated. Now the socket size that we are using on these bolts is a 12 millimeter 12-point socket. So if you don't have any 12-point sockets, I'd recommend you go pick some up. They're good to have. Plus, if you get the Harbor Freight packs that are always on sale for like, I believe they're 20 to 30 bucks. You get both standard and metric. Now I am using an electronic torque wrench. You can see here, it's the Quinn brand. It's from Harbor Freight. It's a really, really nice torque wrench. This is the 3/8 one. It goes up to 100 foot-pounds. Now there isn't a specific like torquing sequence, but what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go from the middle and go out. So we're gonna start. All right, it's starting to catch torque now. All right, that's 20. We're going to reset it. $20. All right. Now we're going to work our way out, like we mentioned. All right, ready? Let's go, guys. Try to do it in one motion. All right, that's 20. Let's reset it. So now what we're going to do is, luckily my torque wrench has memory settings, and we're going to go to 40 foot-pounds now. So again, we're going to start from the middle and work our way out. All right, that's 40. So now what we're gonna do is from 60, inwards, outwards. That's not the way it's called for, but that's just the way I wanna do it. So let me get the torque wrench onto 60 and we're going to go from there, guys. All right, that's 60. Yeah, 60 is much harder. All right, that's 60. I apologize for the grunting and all right, we are all done with the torquing sequence. Now let's spin her and see. Nice and smooth, no binding, and we're good to go. Awesome. Super excited, guys. Now what we're gonna do is next, we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna flip her over. I'm going to install the pistons and the rods, torque all those down, and then we'll be done as far as the assembling the bottom end. So we're back. Now what we're gonna do is we're gonna put the pistons in the block. I already put one in. I already put cylinder number 4 in. So now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna put cylinder 3 because you never want the crank. Let me zoom in and show you guys. So you can see, you never want the crank to be higher up like that one, like cylinder 2. So you can see cylinder 3, the crank is all the way down at the bottom. Same thing with cylinder 4. So that's why we're doing cylinder 3 and 4 together. You never want to nick the crank, especially when putting these back in. So just trying to place the camera back to where it was. All right, perfect. So as far as the piston goes, you can see I have it marked as piston number 3. All right, guys, so quick correction. The exhaust side is on the opposite of the oil filter housing side, and the intake is on the oil filter housing side. Sorry, got confused, so just wanted to go ahead and correct it with this voiceover here. Back to the video. What I'm going to do is I'm going to oil up the galleys with some motor oil. This is 1060 that's in here. That's the break-in oil that I'll be using for the engine, and then I'm going to switch over to 5W50. That's what I'll be running. So you can see I got oil in there, and then I'm going to oil up the piston as well. So that way it doesn't go in dry. You also want to make sure your rings are at 180 degrees. Now I'm going to, I would oil this up, but this is already oiled up from when I put piston number 4 in. So that's all good there. Just gonna place that there. That's the Wiseco piston ring compressor. You can use your traditional one that, you know, that everyone uses, the one that you can tighten down. That'll work fine as well. I just have this, so that's what I'm going to be using. So you can see, make sure my piston rings are sitting nice. And then we're going to place it in here. And slowly push. Heard that there. There we go. She's in. Sometimes I'll tap it with the rubber mallet, sometimes I won't. All right, now what we're gonna do is we're gonna switch the block over, so that way we can oil the rod bearing, and then also catch it to put it on the crank as well. So you guys can see here, the rod's right there. We're gonna take our assembly lube, put some on the bearing, and then we're going to place it into the block, and then you're going to guide it. So you can see my finger is on one of the bolt holes, and then my hand is on the bottom of the piston. I'm slowly pushing the piston up so it seats right there onto the crank. And then I'm going to take my other bearing side, lube it up, and then make sure these have tangs as well, so make sure you do tang, meet the tang sides together. So the tang side is here, so we're going to place that right there. Slides right on perfect. And I do have ARP bolts for the rod bearings as well, so I'm going to put assembly lube on both bolts. There's a little trick I learned to evenly distribute. I didn't do it on the main studs because I honestly forgot it. And then we're just going to hand tighten everything for now. And then what we'll do is once we get all the pistons in the block, we'll torque everything down to spec. All right, guys, so we're going to finish up the last part for today's video as far as assembling the bottom end. So the last thing we have to do is torque up these rod bolts to spec. The spec that ARP calls for is 50 foot-pounds. It isn't the same procedure as the stock rod bolts where it's torqued to yield. So where you torque it and then you stretch it. Now, the procedure I'm going to be doing is purely personal preference. I'm going to torque them halfway, so 25 foot-pounds each side, and then we're going to go to 50 afterwards. You don't have to do it the way I'm doing, it's just personal preference. It's the way I've been doing stuff for a while now. So that's 25. That's 25. Now we're gonna do this one. $25. All right, now we're going to go to 50. All right, that's 50. $50 and last one. All right, 50. So now we got those torqued down. So what I'm going to do is get my paint marker here. We're going to mark it off. First, let me wipe it down because it is full of a little oil. I guess my paint marker doesn't want to work. It's the first time I'm using it, so. All right, so now that we got those marked off, I'm gonna go ahead and wrap up the rest, and we will come back when we're all done. Last one to 50, boys. All right, guys. Well, that concludes today's video, part 1, if you would say, of the engine build. So what we did today was we got the bottom end pretty much assembled and honestly the whole rotating assembly. So we got pistons and rods in and torque to spec. We also got the main bearings in and torque to spec, and also the crank. Everything spins smoothly. Nothing's binding, so far so good. So that's pretty much it for today's video. I really appreciate you guys for tuning in. If you can give me a like, that'd be awesome. Drop down in the comments below if there's any questions you have as far as, you know, the engine goes, the whole build goes. I'm gonna try to be very transparent, not gatekeeping anything. It was tough to find information alone when I was doing the research on how I wanted to build not only this motor, but the turbo kit and what I wanted to run and stuff like that. So I had a hard time of finding the information. A lot of people gatekeep their secrets. But luckily I talked to a lot of cool guys in the community. They gave me a lot of insights, and then kind of applied some modern stuff from my background as far as, like, you know, how I want to do, you know, certain specs and whatnot. So yeah, if you could subscribe, that'd be really awesome, so that way you guys can stay updated on the build. And yeah, that's pretty much it.